This world has too much darkness. It feels overwhelming. I'm tired of arguing with people. What can I do? It's getting harder to live out your values. I feel like an outsider, an exile.
Well, hey, good morning again. I had to double check to see if I was on or not. All right, so we're starting this new series called Exiles, and we're going to open up, so you can just go ahead and open up to the book of Daniel, and we're going to spend a little bit of time there. Just go ahead and open up to Daniel 1. This whole series is going to be through Daniel. We're going to jump around a little bit, but mostly in Daniel. And awful quiet out there. So anyway, let me share a story with you. If you guys know me, I travel a lot, and as I've traveled, it always gets you get into a plane, I don't know why people say you get on a plane. I've never got on a plane. I've gotten into a plane, but I've got as I get into the plane, I sit down in the seat. And there's one of two things that happen. I never talk to the person that sits next to me unless it's my wife. Then she just wants to talk all the time and listen to worship music. Once we're off the ground, then she falls asleep. But then there's other times I fly and I'll go and see, or I'm going to training, or I'm going someplace, and that same thing happens. Either I'll never talk to the person that's next to me, or the worst thing ever happens. The first thing that comes out, they go, "What do you do?" It always happens. That conversation always comes up. Where are you going? What do you do? And for me, I always have this tendency that I want to lie immediately. I want to lie immediately. Because here's what happens. As soon as I bring it up, as soon as I go, "Oh, I pastor a church," the whole conversation changes. The whole thing changes. The whole demeanor changes. Everything changes. So number one, it could be that they are a Christian, and then my whole flight has been turned into a conversation rather than work, right? Because I like to get on the plane, and they just want to have a conversation, all things spiritual. And I go, "I really didn't plan on this, but let's do it." And then the other thing that happens is somebody will get on there and go, "Do not God talk me." And I'll go, "My pleasure. I didn't really want to right now. I just wanted to sit down and do some work." But here's the problem, is that most of the time I don't want to actually say something is because I had a really, really bad experience one time. I got on a flight, and I got into a flight. I was sitting in the seat, and it was actually one of those flights, and I fly a lot, so I got upgraded into first class, and I was sitting in first class, and the person obviously thought I was important, because they go, "What do you do?" And I said, "I pastor a church." And she looked at me and she said, "Don't you dare try to save me on this flight." And I said, "Okay. That's fine." Now, I just went back to buried my face in the computer. And see, here's the thing, is that when flights get rough, I have a pretty good peace about me when the flights get rough. They don't bother me. Because I've always gotten on the plane, and Melissa doesn't like this, but as soon as I get on the plane, I have this nice little prayer. I go, well, God, if you're going to take me out on this bad boy, then I'm coming home. And Melissa hates that. She goes, "What about our kids?" And I go, "Well, God's going to provide for them. He provided for us. He's going to provide for them. And so, if this is the way we go out, then this is the way we go out. I have no worries, right? So if it's rough, it's rough." Well, this flight happened to be rough. Like rough. It was like the whole time, like we got up in the air, the captain came on and said, "Hey, we just want to let you know there is no service. In fact, they're not going to even get out of their seats. They're not going to get out of their seats. They're going to go check on you, and it's at your own risk if you decide that you want to go use the restroom." That was the line. And so it was. So as we were flying along, the plane is rocking and rolling, and we're on our way from Tulsa to Denver. And so they're both kind of rough places. It's not a long flight. And as we're on our way there, the plane's bouncing up and down, and she looks right at me and she goes, "Will you pray for me?" Wait a minute here. You told me you didn't want to be saved on this flight. You were hoping that we were going to go down in a glorious fashion, and now it's all that's happening, and you were hoping for the repercussions of that action. Now, oh, how the things have changed. See, the thing that happens, though, is that there's times that when that happens, you get in there and you go, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." See, how many of us have sometimes struggled to share with others that we are a Christian? How many of us have had that? And sometimes it's about comfort levels. Sometimes it's about, like, our details may be different. Like, you may not have this experience where you're on an airplane. You may have had it where you were just hanging out with friends. You may have had one of these things that you were going some other place. You may have just been somebody may have asked you, "Why aren't you doing this?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm following Jesus now, and I just don't do that any longer." Or, "Why aren't you swearing?" "Well, just because I don't want that. I'm following Jesus now." Or is it hard for us to do that? See, we people, and in fact, if you listen to sociologists describe our culture as post-Christian culture. Now, I want to tell you that right now we're actually kind of in this weird, kind of unique situation where if you talk to people that are over 30 right now, so 30 and older, but younger than 70. So there's this 40-year gap. 30 to 70, there's not very many followers of Jesus. Comparative. Below 30, they are coming back in droves. They are coming back in droves. It's massive. But that 30 to 70-year-old, they are post-Christian. And see, so it puts us kind of in this unique situation. Now, the greatest generation, those that are 70 older, that greatest generation, and the reason why we call them the greatest generation is because they did some great things. But when we come back to this, we go back into this period. We go back into this period where we're talking about these 30 to 70-year-olds. And sometimes, you might be going, "Well, I'm a Christian and I'm in that age range." Yet you're an exception to the rule, by the way. You're just an exception to it. That's all. Woohoo! Yeah, be happy. See, in a post-Christian culture, thank you, it's the idea of rejecting Christianity having a place in our public spaces, in our public spheres. So just think about it. It's not you don't see it as much. And now some of you are going to see it more, and we see it more often now in this current administration where we're seeing more of the Ten Commandments out there. But if you were outside of this room and you weren't a regular attender at church at all, you don't see a lot of Jesus on your feed, on your Facebook feed. You don't see it a lot on your Twitter feed or your X feed, or you don't see it like that. You don't see it a lot in your social media unless you bring it to it. And we actually see our world actually moving very fast away from Christian values. We actually see it happening. And in fact, if you look at what happens is you can look at Europe, and you'll see Europe is already pretty much disengaged, and you can go to Canada, and you can see Canada is the next place, so it kind of moves in this direction, and it's coming downwards into the United States. So where how Europe goes, Canada goes, and it kind of comes into the United States is how it typically is working right now. And so this pastor, author, and professor Lee Beach wrote, "In the post-Christian revolution, it's fair to say that the church is one of those former power brokers who once enjoyed a place of influence at the cultural table, but has been chased away from its place of privilege and is now seeking where to find it belongs amid the ever-changing dynamics of contemporary culture. We are looking for where we belong." We are looking for where we belong. So just think about this, is that the church 250 years ago, we carried massive, massive influence in politics. Up until 50 years ago, it wasn't that football ruled Sundays, the church ruled Sundays. You go to some states, you couldn't even go to a liquor store on Sundays, because guess why? Because there was church. It just happened. In some states, it's still that way. In fact, if you didn't know this, where they make that Tennessee whiskey, Jack Daniels, you still can't buy it there. Where they make it, you can't buy. You can only buy a commemorative bottle where they brew, but you cannot. That county is a dry county. You cannot go buy liquor in that county because of the type of laws that they have in that county. And see, that's just how it is. John Tyson, who pastors a church in New York City, describes these three big shifts in involvement for Jesus followers. He says, first, Christianity is shifting from the majority to the minority. That's what's happened. It's majority to the minority. People are walking away from Jesus is no longer normal. It's not increasingly rare. It's just happening. People are just walking away from churches. That's what's happening. And it can be deeply unsettling from people that are older when they can remember churches that were packed. When they can remember that. They can walk into churches and be like, they just knew that Sunday churches were going to be packed. And they knew that as they walked in, the places would be overflowing, that it was just one of those things. And you could walk into almost any room and people, 85 to 90% of the room would identify as being a follower of Jesus. Now, it's just not that way any longer. It's no longer that way. See, but also, just as a reminder, and just one of these things, if you're taking notes and it's in your notes, to be a follower of Jesus is to be part of a shrinking minority. So as you're following Jesus, just know you're part of a shrinking minority. You're part of this group, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But guess what? There was 12 that started with Jesus, right? And it expanded pretty amazing. And I tell you guys this, one of those dudes was kind of sketchy. He was a bit rough, and that was the guy who controlled the money. We got to be kind of, Second, Christianity is shifting from the center to the fringe. So if you kind of see it, it's no longer like it used to be just main line. It was just main line. Now it's kind of on the fringe. It's like when people are talking about it, it's kind of on the fringe. See, towns used to be built, if you look at towns now, they used to be built where the first building that was almost always built was the church. Almost always, because guess what? At a church, you could do things. You would build a church, and you could do city council there, and you could do all of your trials there, and you could do all of those things. All of it could happen in a church. You know what the first building that's built now in a city? A Walmart. That's not a Walmart, by the way. It's usually a Dollar General. That's usually what it is. It's a post office and a Dollar General. That's what happens. And so, but it's usually a store of some sort. It's commerce. It's commerce that usually comes first. It's no longer about God. It's about how do we make money? How do we make money here? What are we going to do? How do we turn a profit off of this? And so what happens is once they were built with church being at the center, now they're just kind of built on the outskirts. Think about this now. If you look at maybe Fairfield, or you look at Sassoon, or you look at any of those places, and if you happen to be wherever you're at, you might be in the South, and if you're in the South, there's a church on every corner, but if you happen to be in California, there's churches have been pushed to the fringes of the city. Most of them meet in warehouses. Most of them, there's very few that meet in traditional church buildings any longer, and if they are, it's because they're old. That's it. That's just, they've been there forever. So now we've been pushed out to the outside. It's just how it's gone. And see, then that's what happens. See, the separation of church and state was meant to have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion, right? It's like you were supposed to be able to go, hey, I'm going to go worship who I want to worship. It's not being forced by the state to tell you who to worship. And see, that's kind of where it comes down to. So often we're met by suspicion. So to be part of a movement of Jesus is to be part of moving to the margins. Just know that. To be part of the movement of Jesus is to be moving to the margins. So just know that. And then finally, Christianity has been shifted, and in shifting on a regular basis from respected to disrespected. It's just been this big shift. See, the word Christian no longer means what it used to mean. Openly identifying as a Christian no longer brings the added measure of respect. Right? You say that, it actually brings a level of liability. You say that you're a Christian, and all of a sudden, now you have to be on your P's and Q's because people think, well, are you going to abuse me? Because that's what the church does. Are you going to do this? What are you going to do? Are you here for my money? What are you after? So it's got more of a liability. The general attitude towards Christianity is a level of disrespect. And in some ways, the church has played a role in creating this. So we shouldn't say that the church is innocent in this. The church has created a role in doing this. And every time we act in unchristian ways, we point people towards that. And so just think about the actions that we do as followers. We continue to point people in that direction. We continue to go, this is where like every time we do it. And it's not just the leadership from the stage. It's those of us that identify as Christians, those that are in the seats. And as soon as you say, I am a follower of Jesus, and then you go outside and you act like a jerk rather than being loving, well, then all of a sudden you've continued to push us to the fringe. You've continued to make it so where we're no longer the main line, we're now on the outskirts. Now, instead of people respecting us, now we're disrespected because you've made it to where people look at us and go, well, why would I want that when that is no different than every other person that's out there? Why would I want that? See, the thing is that we might be living in this culture that has made it to where Christianity has been very difficult to self-identify as being part of, or being a follower of Jesus, or being somebody that just, I'm going to live my faith out loud. But some of that is just a self-inflicted wound. Some of that we've just brought on ourselves. Some of that what we've done is that we've gone out and we've created so much negativity. We've drawn in so much bad that people are just look at us and go, there's no difference between being a follower of Jesus than just living every other life that's out there. And that's what the difference, when you look at it, what does our life look like that's different than those around us? What does your life look like? So look at your look at your friends that are not followers of Jesus, and look at your life and go, how is my life different than theirs? What, I spend some time in Scripture, but is that the only difference? I spend some time in prayer. Is that the only difference? Does my life actually have more joy? Does my life actually have more love in it? Does my life actually have more happiness in it? Does my life actually have the presence of Jesus? Does my life actually carry evidence that Jesus is actually part of it? And see, that's the thing, is that does our lives look like that? Do our lives just look like their lives? Because if our lives just look like their lives, then probably the Spirit is not dwelling within us. That might be a tough statement. That might be a tough statement for some of us to hear right now. Some of us, you may be just walking in here and go, oh, wait a minute here, Mike. This is my first time walking in the door, or my first time listening to one of your sermons, and that's rough. Okay, I'm sorry. But you should walk out of here changed today. You should walk out of here going, I need to change something. I want to do something different. And if you don't ever walk in here going, well, I've been challenged to do something different, then I didn't do my job. I just came in here and entertained you. And while there is a factor of entertainment here, because I want you to be able to remember what we're talking about, but at some point, there's got to be some accountability, and there's got to be a harsh reality that you start to listen to and go, I need to change because my life does not look like Jesus is part of it. And so if your life does not look like Jesus is part of it, then today is the day that you need to step up and go, I'm going to make a change, and Jesus will become part of my life. And people around me will know because of my actions, not because I holler it from the rooftops, but because of how I live and how I act. It's not about, I self-identify, I check the box. No. It's because of how I love, how I have joy, no matter what the circumstances are, I continue to persevere and draw people near to Him. See, those are the things that we need to be doing. That's how the lifestyle that we need to be going in. And see, we aren't doing that. Anyway, I'm on a tangent. So we got to... So what are we to do in this type of world? What are we to do in this, as Christ followers, to do in this kind of world? What are we supposed to do? How are we going to do this? How do we walk the way of Jesus in this new and foreign land? What do we do? How do we walk out our faith in a culture that's increasingly hostile towards us? What does faithfulness look like amidst the mounting resistance and pressure to assimilate to the behaviors and values of the broader culture around us? Because that's what it's asking us to do. Stop doing that and do this. Stop spending money that way, do this. Don't give, do this. Don't be generous, do these things. How is it that we're supposed to do this? And so for the next month, we're going to look at the incredibly important work that was already laid out before us and the dynamic of this of being exiles in a foreign land. Because see, it's very, very important for us to remember that this world is not our home. It's not our home. So here I shared a story, and some of you are relatively new, so I'm going to share this story with you again because I think it's funny. And I stole this, so don't think that I was creative enough to come up with it on my own. But Melissa and I went to a conference. We were down in San Diego, and we checked into this hotel, and we walked in, and at the time, I was pretty cheap, right? And so we didn't stay in a nice hotel by any means. We walked in, and it was dirty, it was grimy, and there was no towels. There were no towels in the place. And so I told Melissa, hey, we got to go get some towels. And whatever they bring us, they're going to be nasty anyway, so we're going to have to get some towels. And so we went to the store, and we liked the upscale but fake Target brand. So we went to Target, and we went there, and we got some towels. But as we were walking along, I realized that we were in that same bath aisle where the towels are, and I was like, you know what? We need to get a shower curtain because that thing was nasty as well. So we got a shower curtain. And so we grabbed that and put that in the cart. And as we were walking along, we passed by the bedding section, and I said, man, if the shower curtain's nasty like that, we might want to get a blanket. And so we threw a blanket in there. And for me, I love TV. Love it. I'm a movie junkie, and the TV there was one of those old tube-type TVs, the one, not a flat screen. And so I was like, hey, we're just going to put a TV in the cart. So we took all of that, and we got back to the hotel that we were only staying in for one night, and put up a shower curtain, put in these nice towels, put on the blanket, put on the TV. By the way, that's what we're doing here on earth on a regular basis. We're trying to make it comfortable when we're only going to be here for a night. That's what we're doing. So we're doing too much here when all we're doing, and see, all of you are laughing at me, right? You're like going, oh, you really? No, I would never do that. I would leave, by the way, before I bought towels and all that stuff at a hotel, I'd go pay the extra money at another place. But just think about this, is that how many of us are trying to make our lives so comfortable in a place that you're never going to change? It's always going to be the Motel 6. It's always going to be the Super 8. You're not staying at the Ritz-Carlton here. This is earth, and it's always going to be a terrible place. No matter what you do, no matter how you change it, you're always going to have strife. You're always going to have things that are going to come up. And you have to sit here and you have to go, what am I going to do to move closer to Jesus? Because I know that this is just a temporary home. This is just a place for me for tonight. This is just a place for a simple time. Everything is about being with Jesus. And see, if we're spending so much time trying to be comfortable here, what we should be trying to do is spend so much time trying to get our friends onto the train closer to Jesus. And stop worrying about the shower curtain's dirty. Yeah, the shower curtain can be dirty at the place that we're staying at for a day. Don't get in that shower. Or bring some flip-flops with you. Be prepared. Start thinking about where you're going and being prepared for it. Be prepared for what we're doing here. And that's what we're talking about now, is that as we're living as exiles in this world, we're going to be prepared for where we're at. So as we walk into this season, and as we go through this series, we're going to be prepared for how do we deal with this increasingly important work that we have to do with this increasingly hostile culture that we're dealing with. Like when we went to the city council, just recently, we went to city council to get this project that we have going in downtown doing, right? And the first thing they came up with, why do we have to have the church do this? Why not have the church do it? Why do we have to have a government program step in when the church should be doing it? Are you worried that we're going to go out and we're going to reach people for Jesus? And by the way, that line came from somebody who called themselves a follower of Jesus. So those are the questions that come up from even followers of Jesus. And see, now granted, they still voted for us and we still move forward, but that's the type of hostility we face even from other followers. Even from people that are like, so how do we prepare? How do we live in this culture that's increasingly hostile? Because I believe, and we can believe, that if we stand firm in God's truth, even in a land that doesn't know or want it, right? So we can stand firm in God's truth, even in a land that doesn't know or want it. Right? So that's what we want to do. So, let's look at this. A few decades ago, Christianity was so common among Americans that it was almost taken for granted. In the 1990s, roughly 90% of U.S. adults considered themselves to be followers of Christ. Now, they didn't go to church on a regular basis, but they considered themselves to be a Christian or a follower of Christ. Things radically changed in the last 25 years. Now, somewhere between 40 and 50 million people in the U.S. are walking away from the church. And each generation, from boomers to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z, is stepping further and further and further away in their faith. Some experts estimates Only 10% of Gen Z became Jesus followers in their lifetime. Only 10%. From 90 to 10. It's a staggering number. 30 years ago, only 5% of Americans claimed no religious affiliation. If you looked at it, that number 20 years ago grew to 17%. In the last 15 years, it's now at 30%. The number is skyrocketing. And I mean, if you just think about that, that's just Americans. It's not just an American problem. That's just Americans where there happens to be 300 million people. So if you think about that, that's a staggering number of what's going on there. This makes them the single largest group in the United States. That's more than Catholics, by the way. Catholics are 23%. The unaffiliated are 30%. It's crazy. And then more than evangelical Protestants is 24%. So if you just start looking at it, but you got to know is that Catholics are considered one denomination where all of us are broken up into, like we all got, you're a Baptist, you're a Mormon, like not Mormon, but Mormons are left in there too. But you're Baptist, you're Methodist, you're whatever. They're all lumped into that as well. So we're not a single thing. One thing is for sure, those who remain part of the church, the ground is shifting beneath our feet, and the shift is seismic. You can feel it. You can. And it's not just the numbers. It's those attending church. It's these that we see how it is when you're out in the streets. You see how it is when you're dealing with people. The culture has been changing. And so does Christianity have its place in it? And we have to look at this. And so not so long ago, the world had a positive outlook on Christians and the association that people had with Christians in their mind. They had a positive outlook there. And now if you ask people today, it's not so much. It's not so much. And in fact, when you ask people, when you say, what does the word Christian bring up to you, and not the name Christian, like the name somebody is, like we had somebody who worked for us, the name was Christian, and you might know a Christian or two, but somebody who is self-identified as a Christian, what does that bring up to you? And I have a video that I used to play before preaching on a topic like this, but almost always the thing that most people self-identify with is hypocrite. Hypocrite or liar. That's almost always the two things that come up between them. So, but today, that positive influence is just not true anymore. It's just gone. So there was a time when speaking openly about one personal faith in Jesus while holding a place in public office, was generally thought of as normal and admirable. Now it's not even that, unless you're running for president, and that's just because you're trying to steal a vote. See, and that's not true any longer anymore. It's increasingly taboo. Now a person of faith is generally expected to keep to yourself. Make sure it doesn't interfere with your work. Make sure you don't bring a Bible to work. Make sure you don't have any of those things out. It's less considered. It's anything less is just considered inappropriate. HR will call you into their office. Hey, come on in here. I heard you brought a Bible to work. I did. And not only that, and if you struggle with feeling like an outsider in this land that you're no longer familiar with, the good news is you're actually in a land that you're not supposed to be familiar with. That's good news. So, even when feeling like you're in exile, we can seek the peace and prosperity of our land while holding on to our true citizenship. That's what we need to be kind of reminded of. That's what we need to be thinking of. We can seek the peace and the prosperity of our land while holding on to our true citizenship. Remember that. No matter where we're at, no matter which direction we're going, no matter what we're doing, we can continue to seek, and our land is in heaven. So just remember that. So, now, I've talked a whole lot. I've actually talked 28 minutes, and we haven't even cracked open the Bible yet. So let's get to that. So, we're gonna open up Daniel, and so at the beginning of this book coincides with Babylon's rise over the dust of the Assyrian Empire, right? And so the military commander, his name's Nebuchadnezzar, is making a name for himself by winning a number of battles, right? He just continues to come through, and he is on it. He defeats the Egyptians and the charm, and he's just on this thing, and from his command center in Syria, he engages in battles all across Palestine. Right, and it's this effort to push the Egyptians out of the region. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to push the Egyptians out of the region. And Nebuchadnezzar is the anointed king under his rule. Babylon grows stronger and stronger and stronger by eventually reaching these higher powers. And the story that we're going to begin with is Nebuchadnezzar is surrounding Jerusalem and her gates. That's where he's at. Right? They're there. And so Daniel, and maybe his friend or a biographer, somebody wrote this, writes, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, I mispronounced that, but you can, if you know it better, then come up here and preach this. The king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it, and the Lord delivered Judah into his hand, along with some of the articles from the temple of God. These he carried off to the temple of his God in Babylon, and then the treasures of his house of God. See, here's the thing, is that the author of Daniel, possibly Daniel himself, immediately pulls back the curtain and shows that there's more going on. He actually shows that the people have already rebelled against God at this point. That's what he's already showing here. He's already saying that, hey, look, this is what's happening. And so the king of Judah is already being unfaithful. He's already being unfaithful. And something we know, because if you read the events leading up to this that we read about elsewhere, in God's sovereignty, He allows rulers and kings to rise and fall, like as we go through and read this. And so even before elections and in the end, all earthly kings and kingdoms are temporary. And so Babylon may be wealthy and powerful in this moment, but God will judge their actions in time. In fact, the next time we see them sporting the stuff they steal from God's temple is on the eve of their downfall. But perhaps most incredible is God's ability to use the earthly chaos to accomplish His heavenly purpose. It's kind of one of those things. So, there's a spoiler alert here. There's much more that goes on in the weeks to come in the Exiles, this is the series that comes on. But for now, Nebuchadnezzar and the powers of Babylon capture Jerusalem. Lives are lost, and the kingdom of Judah falls, right? And then we read, the king ordered Ashpenaz, chief of his court's officials, to bring the king's service some of the Israelites from the royal family and nobility, young men without physical defect, handsome, showing well aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The king assigned them daily amounts of food and wine from the king's table. They were to be trained for 3 years, and after that they were to enter the king's service. Amongst them was Daniel, right? That's what happens. And here we're introduced to Daniel and his friends for the first time, and maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't, but imagine for a moment just what took place and what it would be like to experience this for yourself. Imagine that you're Daniel, a Jewish teenager, raised in a good home, good part of town, you work hard, you show a lot of promise, you're a smart kid with relatives serving in various positions of leadership within the temple and in Jerusalem, and there's a bright future ahead of you, because that's what's going on here. And then suddenly, a force that defeats the Egyptians, grows power, descends on your hometown. Jerusalem is violently overtaken and quickly defeated. People you've known in your entire life have been killed, including some of your family members. And by force, you're dragged away from your home, right? And your family and your temple and everything that you've ever known to a foreign land that is hostile to you, your faith, and the God you serve. Just imagine that for a moment. What would you do? And as an exile, you're put into this 3-year cultural immersion program designed to convert you into a different lifestyle, to give you different values, practices, like they're trying to give you different, they're trying to teach you to worship different gods. They're trying to teach you they're trying to erase your faith and embed you into the faith of the Babylons. What would you do? How would you act? I mean, just imagine if something like that happened right here, right now, that if all of a sudden something showed up and you were dragged away. You had the promise that they looked at you and they were like, oh, yeah, you're going to be one that's going to be a leader. You're going to show other people. You're going to be able to bring other people up. People are going to respect you until they grabbed you. You may not feel that. You may not, it might be hard for you to relate, but they saw it in you. And so they take you back to their country and they start ingraining everything into you, their traditions, their values, their gods, everything. They ingrain all that into you. What do you do? How do you act? How do you live? How do you respond? Because I think for some of us, we fall in line. We just go, well, this is what it is. I want to live. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to live like this. We just fall into line. And see, the problem is that's what most of our world does. And in fact, that's what most of us are doing here and now. Most of us are doing that here and now. We've been dragged into this culture. We've been dragged into this, and instead of living the faith out loud that we've been called to live, but instead of living the way that God has asked us to live, we've decided that we were going to accept the culture, we were going to accept the values, we were going to accept the gods that this world has in place. We're going to accept the culture of everything has to be the acquisition of more material. We're going to accept the God of money. We're going to accept all of these things rather than going, I will pursue Jesus. Nope, I'm going to continue to go after this rather than going after what God has called us to go after. See, there's a lot of similarity here just because we haven't been violently ripped away, a lot of us have actually tiptoed into this culture and have just seemingly ingrained ourselves into it. We have to look at it and go, how do we change this? What do you do in a place that you've never been before living as an exile? Do you remain faithful in this new kind of environment? How does anyone go through that and remain faithful to the Lord through it all? How do you, like after that, how do you go through that? How do you go, well, God, you just took away my family. You just took away everything. How do you remain faithful through that? How do you remain faithful through all of that that's just happened? How do you go through this experience? How do you go through this new experience of being exiled, new to some of this cultural moment? And the truth is, in the Bible, we find it everywhere, though. You see this happen over and over again where people are planted in new places and new things, and exile is actually a theme we find throughout stories and experiences of people of the Bible, right? From Genesis and Daniel and Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah and Chronicles, all the way to Jesus, we see all throughout the letters of the New Testament, we see people as exiles all the time. We see it. Peter, one of Jesus' closest followers, right, and friends, the follower of the faith of the early church, the father of the faith of the early church actually opens up one of his letters with this line: Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to God's elect. To God's elect, right? That means us, by the way. That means us. Just in case you didn't get that. And then get this. To God's elect, to exiles scattered throughout the providence. To exiles scattered throughout the providences, right? And so then in the same letter, he writes, live out your time as foreigners here in reverent fear. That's what he says. Live out your time here in reverent fear. Why? Why is he telling you that? Why is he saying live out your time here in reverent fear and foreigners in this land? He's saying because you have no idea what's coming. You have to always be looking over your shoulder. You have to be looking back because you have no idea what attack is getting ready to come. You have no idea what's coming. You have no idea. Because I will tell you right now, and I've used this line before, the devil does not show up at your house wearing a skin-tight red suit with a pitchfork. Like, hey, let's go out and party. No, it's not how it happens. The devil doesn't show up that way. The devil shows up in the most comical ways usually. It's usually through a friend. It's usually through somebody who's still out there doing and running amok out there. It's usually through even family members that are out still doing things. Hey, let's go out and let's go do this. Let's go do these things. It's not somebody who shows up to your house and go, hey, you want to go get a salad and let's go get some and work on let's go to the gym. No, it's somebody that's like, hey, let's go to a sports bar. Let's go hang out. Oh, no, don't worry about drinking there. They have wings and you can get a Diet Coke there. No. Now, you know what's going to happen. You know what happens to the next thing. Especially if you have an addiction or any of those things, as soon as you see somebody else around you, you start salivating, you start going, I want that. Of course you do. Why would you put yourself in that situation? What, because your friend invited you? The friend that did not know that he was acting on behalf of the evil one? That had no idea. They had no idea that he was doing that. Had no idea what temptation you were going to fall for. They just showed up at your house. That's why you have to pre-decide and predetermine what you're going to allow in and what you're not. Pre-decide. Make some determinations. And here, he refers to the early followers of Jesus, in which includes, he says, live in reverent fear as foreigners and exiles. That's what he says. To follow Christ and live on earth is to live like an exile. Friends, this is who we are. Like so many who came before us, an increasingly post-Christian nation, we are exiles. We are exiles here. And more in this experience. So what do we do with this? How do we respond? What does real faithfulness look like living as an everyday exile? What does it look like? So how do we respond? How do you respond to living in exile? How do you respond? Chances are you've experienced, you even do some of the two common tempting responses of living in exile. You've already done this. So the first response, which is the most common, is separatism, right? That's what it is. We don't engage, we don't enter in, and we don't get involved. Do you and your family have this posture of disengagement? Is that what your family does? We just don't do this. We do everything we can to remove ourselves from the broader culture. We separate ourselves from anyone who doesn't look, act, or agree with us. We put a distance between us and those people, right? That's what we do. We have this posture of going, I'll separate. It typically looks like us. We enter into Christian spheres and we never leave them. That's what happens. We create our own separate Christian version of everything. So, and that's what happens. We worship at our Christian church. We drink coffee at our Christian coffee shop. We shop at Christian stores. We support Christian businesses. We send our kids to Christian schools and Christian co-ops, and we hang out with our Christian friends. See, the problem is, how do we reach those that are lost? How do we reach those that are far from Jesus? If all you're doing is hanging out with Christians, I asked Chris Tomlin this very question. Chris Tomlin, if you guys don't know who Chris Tomlin is, just listen to K-Love every once in a while. One of his songs will play. I asked him this question, because I asked him, he's like, what do we do to bring more people that are outsiders to these concerts? I said, stop playing Christian music to only Christians. Bring Metallica in, and then you show up with Metallica on stage, and you play a Christian song then. All of a sudden, what happens? All of a sudden, non-Christians just heard your music. Maybe one or two of them might follow you. Maybe some of them might throw some stuff at you. But who knows? They might hear something. But you want non-Christians at your concert, stop playing Christian concerts. That's what you have to do. I'm sure that I'll hear about that too. See, but none of these things, by the way, none of these things being separatists, none of these things are bad in itself. But when we do this every day across every area of our life, it becomes very difficult, if not impossible, for the church to have any real impact on this world. We won't have any real impact on this world. In fact, we just separate ourselves from everything else. And so how is your world making an impact on this world? How are you making an impact on this world? How are you making an impact with your neighbors, your schools, your community, your sports teams, all of those things? How are you making an impact on this world? And then the second response, right, is syncretism, right? So syncretism that's the next one. And this is adopting the passively accepting values of what the world is practicing around us. Like, how do we do this? And it's more dangerous than separatism. This is making small compromises over and over again, not wanting to be excluded or face backlash, but making a point just to sort of kind of blend in and go along with the flow. So we start doing things that culture is doing around us and saying, it's really not a big deal. It's really not a big deal. We stop doing things that fuel our faith, that make us distinctively Christian. We come on Sundays to be with our church a lot less, so we become creasters, or even maybe just Easter attenders, or maybe just Christmas attenders, or maybe we just don't attend at all, and we just go, I'm spiritual, and I don't show up to church at all. That's a line that you hear a lot. I don't need to show up to church to have faith. In fact, Hebrews 10:25 says, do not forsake meeting together, as some have done, because you need one another. You need people together. You need other people holding you accountable. The church is more than just me giving you the word and me spending time preaching at you. The church is literally the body of believers coming together to edify, grow one another, and hold one another accountable and lift each other up. So when you walk in here, you get the word and you bounce, that's a problem. This is about building relationships. It's about coming in here and hanging out and loving one another and helping one another and exchanging phone numbers and being part of a church community. If you were here just for the word, God, I'm grateful that you're here, but utilize this time. Utilize this time. Make it to where you actually build relationships. Make it to where you're being grown. Make it to where you have somebody who's holding you accountable. Make it to where you actually have relationships out of this place to where when you walk out, that you actually are being part of a community. Because if you're just showing up here, because you can get the word anywhere. I'll send you a whole bunch of YouTube channels. Don't come here anymore. Just watch the YouTube channel. If you're not going to socialize with people, you're not going to hang out with people and start growing, there's lots of YouTube channels that are much better than me. Much better than me. See, the problem is that that's not the point of this. That's not the point of this. See, how many babies do you know that can self-feed themselves? None of you do, right? You've never seen a newborn come out and be like, just give me that spoon, I'll take care of it. And please, I can open up the bottle too. Don't worry about it. I got it. No. And see, that's the thing is that most of us, we just can't feed ourselves. Most of us, you need other people around you. And see, most of us, as soon as we abandon the church, we don't have other people around us. In fact, we stop talking about it. As soon as we stop attending the church on a regular basis, as soon as we stop going to small groups, as soon as we stop doing those things, and as soon as we just go, I'm spiritual and I'm going to be at home, you know what that really means? That means that you've just become agnostic. That's what it means. So, sorry, again, you might know somebody like that. Help them fix it. And before we know it, it's harder and harder to differentiate ourselves from our lives and the lives of those around us that do not share our faith, that do not share our beliefs, that do not share our rhythms, our practices, that do not share our lifestyles. It's what happens. It starts to become very difficult. And this is precisely what the Babylonians did, and they intended for Daniel and his friends. That's exactly what they did. And honestly, who can blame them? Right? After everything they had gone through and everything they had lost and being forcibly taken from the only home they'd ever known and exiled out to a culture that wanted nothing to do with their faith. Who wouldn't understand that the name of survival and sanity for Daniel and their friends just to sort of table their faith and fall in line? Who wouldn't, to give up the ways of their life, their values, their worship? But that's not what Daniel does. That's not what his friends do. They don't adopt everything. They don't adopt the culture around them. They don't cut themselves off from the life of the other culture either, though. Our response must be different. Our response must be different. See, there's an altogether different way, one that deeply engages the culture which God places them in without sacrificing our integrity. Right? That's what we have to do. So in a letter written by the prophet Jeremiah from Jerusalem to the first wave of exiles in Babylon, here's what he says. He says, we read, "This is what the Lord Almighty said, the God of all Israel says to all of those who carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Marry and have sons and daughters and find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number, do not decrease." What have we been doing for the last 40 years? We've been decreasing. What was God's command? Increase. Well, what have we been doing? Well, how do we change that? What do we have to do? How do we have to fix that? Well, we can't continue to just sit there and go, well, I'm going to be a separatist, and all of a sudden, I'm not going to be part of culture. We have to become part of culture, but we have to be in culture with the mindset of increasing. We have to go, how do I increase in culture? How do I live my faith out loud? How do I make it to where my faith is not, so you cannot be one of, and I used it last week, you cannot have Eeyore faith. You cannot have Eeyore faith. You just cannot. You cannot walk around going, oh, I gotta go to church. You can't do that. You cannot have these mindsets of going, man, church sucks. Or, man, I gotta go hang out with these people from church. They suck too. You can't do that. You can't have that attitude. Why? Who wants to hang out with your friends from church then? Like, who would be like, where are you going? Man, I gotta go hang out with these terrible people at church. Like, I just think about this. I tell my wife and I do this to one another. She'll never admit it to me, but she does it to me, right? She'll drink some, like we'll buy one of these, like we seem to be energy drink fanatics. We'll buy an energy drink, and she'll go, what do you think? And we won't tell each other what we think of it until the other one drinks it. And the whole reason why is because if it's nasty, you're going to get some of that nastiness along with me, right? You have to get some of that, right? So if you just, because if I told her right off the top, oh, it's terrible, it tastes like dirt, she's not going to drink it. Well, how are you telling people when you go, oh, come to my church, they taste like dirt? Nobody's coming for that. Nobody's coming to hang out with your friends that suck. Nobody's coming to hang out with your church attenders. They're like, oh, they're going to pester you. You're never going to get. You're just going to hate them. Why would they come? Like, you better have some good things to say about some people around here. Like even if you don't have some good things, make something up really fast. Like, find something good about each person. Be like, oh yeah, that person, they got really pretty eyes. Find something. Come up with something. Like, even if you don't like that person, I avoid that person. But here's something good about them. You have to come up with this. You have to be able to figure it out. Like, you have to start going, because if you start saying, well, that person sucks, nobody's ever coming for that. Nobody's going to come hang out. You're never going to increase this place in numbers. And it's not just talking about this church in numbers. It's just talking church in general. It's talking God's kingdom in general. As soon as you start labeling other people that you attend church with, they don't just associate it with the Edge. They associate it with every other church in town. That doesn't matter. It's not just here. They're going to go, oh, well, the church down the street sucks too. It's going to be filled with people that are just like them. It is. It's going to be filled with broken people, people that suck, because we all do. There's none of us in here are perfect. None of you walked in here. I watched most of you walk in here today. None of you hovered in here floating on water. All of you walked in. You're all sinners. You're all broken. Well, most of us, the video that played in the beginning, we all relate to. We're like, oh yeah, my kids painted on pictures. My house is a wreck. I tripped over things as I was getting up. I was trying to figure out. I was running late this morning. In fact, I hit snooze enough times on the clock this morning. I was supposed to do work that I had to finish up here because I hit snooze for an hour this morning. I know exactly what that video is about. That's the reason why I chose to play it. See, there's a reason for these things. So as you start to think about it and go, how do I invite people into this? How do I bring people in? Well, make it seem like you actually want to be here. Make it to where they want to be here. Make it to where you go, hey, come with me because we have a good thing going here. Jesus is a good thing. Jesus is a great thing. And as soon as you make it into it sucks, they're going to go, well, all churches suck. Because that's what we do. You start going, oh, they're going to talk about money. Just ignore that part of the conversation. Don't ignore that part of the conversation. That's important. We got a building going down across the way. If you're first time guest here today, you can ignore that part of the conversation. I'm kidding. Oh, man. All right. God stresses a couple of really important things. And I know I've talked a lot. I don't even know how much more I have to go. But we're going to finish it because let's do it. See, do you make sure that you can do all you can to make sure the community of God stays intact? Do you lose or don't lose your identity or distinctiveness? In fact, grow it. So you have a distinct and you have your own unique identity. Make sure that you're growing that. So, it says, have kids, stay rooted together, grow in your community, grow the family of God where He has you. It also says, you won't be going back, is what it says in the scripture. He says, you won't be going back. Things are not going to they're not going to return to the way they were. This is your new home. So build houses, settle, plant gardens, put down roots, and prepare to live as people in this time and place. And then God takes it even a step further. It says, also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. You praying for the city? You pray for where you live at? Will you pray for wherever you're at? If you're watching online, are you praying? See, and I know that people are hearing this the first time back then. They're going, wait, what? This is Babylon. These are the ones who attacked us. They attacked Jerusalem. They tore down the walls. These are the ones who dragged us from our home. They turned us into exiles. You want us to pray for them? They oppressed us. You want us to, and these are the ones that we want nothing to do with them, and yet you're asking us to pray for them. To which God says, yes. Yes. See, God's character is revealed in how we respond in living in exile. How do we respond to this? Even in the midst of culture that is full of all kinds of things that do not reflect God's character, how do you respond in it? What do you do? See, God hasn't given up hope on anyone. God hasn't given up hope on anyone. In a culture that openly rejects the Lord and promotes the worship of false gods, God is willing to pour out His blessings. And God is willing to work in the midst of the mess of people the mess that people have created for themselves. And if He hasn't given up on them, neither should we. Neither should we. See, this is the kind of God we worship. The kind of God we worship, He is good. He is beautiful. He is at work. And He beckons us to join Him in this work. He's asking us. He says, I want you to come be part of this work. What are you doing with that? God has invited you to be His hands and feet. Like, how many places do they go that you go, hey, come be part of this? See, we must seek the peace and prosperity of our land while holding on to true citizenship. That's what we have to do. So don't run away. Don't disengage. Don't grow bitter. Don't give up hope. Because see, God is calling you to live a deep, life of engagement in the place that he has sent you. He has sent you someplace. He has sent you. So don't compromise your character. Don't act just like everyone else and go with the flow. Don't continue to be, and don't stop living your faith out loud because it's become unpopular or there might be a price to pay if you do. You have to continue living the way that God has asked you to live, because guess what? God is not done yet. God is not done. He's not done with you. He's not done with this city. He's not done with this nation. And if you have a part to play in what's going on, then you should do it while being faithful. God is not done. So become part of what he is doing. Step into it. Appreciate it. And when we do that, we will find something beautiful and powerful and true, and something that God's people have experienced for themselves throughout history. God does some of his best work through people that are in exile. See, we need to embrace being in exile because God will do some of his best work through us right now. He's not done. He has a great work to do here. Why do you think that he continues to make a way for us? This church, that he goes, hey, I'm going to make a way for you. I'm going to open up doors that you never thought were going to be possible. I'm going to open up another door. I'm going to do something else for you. Something that you never dreamed about. Something that you never thought about. I'm going to open up relationships. And see, he will do the same thing as soon as you start going, I will remain faithful. Because that's all we've done, is that we've stepped in and we've said, God, we will remain faithful and stay true to what you've asked us to do. And so that's all we do. We just go in, and when I go to city council meetings, I don't go in and just live I just go in and I'm just a presence. Just a presence. Be a presence everywhere you go. When you walk in, when people go, when I walk in, people go, hey, Pastor Mike, I don't even have to do anything. I'm just a presence there. Do people recognize you? Do they see you as who you are? Do they go, hey, that's one of those followers of Jesus. That's one of those followers of Jesus. So that's the thing. Do people recognize you as being one of those followers of Jesus? If you go into the book of Acts and you open up, they never identified themselves as Christians, because that would be something that would get you killed. Yeah. People looked at them and said, there's something different about them. Something different about them. Those are those Christians. They love one another. They care for one another. They're there for one another, and we want that. Do people want what you have? Do people want what you have? See, if they don't want what you have, then let's change that. Let's make it to where we have joy. We have the gifts of the Spirit. We have happiness. And we have one another. Because God's not done. He's not done with you, and he's not done with the city, and he's not done with this nation. Let's pray. Father, thank you. Thank you for having us live in exiles right here, right now, right in this place. God, we don't know what you're doing. We don't know how you're doing. And we don't know what your plan is, but we know that you've asked us to be a part of it. You've asked us to be part of living and breathing and being part of your hands and feet to do the work here in this community, in this nation, and just going out and reaching people for you. And so, Father, as we live in exiles here, help us to stay faithful. Help us to love in such a manner that honors you. Help us to bring to where people see us and they go, I want what they have. There's something different about them. There's something that's just unique. There's something that's attractional. There's something that I want what they have. And so help us to where people, they just see you flowing off of us. And so, Father, help us to be that contagious type of Christian to where people go, I just want that. And it's not about just growing this church, but it's about growing your kingdom. It's about bringing more people in to make heaven crowded. Father, help us it's not about checking a box. It's about living out loud for you, to being bold in our faith, but also still respectful for those around us. Father, thank you. Thank you for this reminder today. Thank you for just how you've called us to step out and do something just a little different. To live our faith out loud rather than hiding it. Rather than being so quiet that they have a hard time trying to figure out who we are, whether we're a follower of you or whether we're just lost someplace else. Father, we ask that you help start removing some of the obstacles that we're going to start facing right now, because as soon as we've made this commitment to start living out loud for you, we will face massive obstacles as we walk out the door. Because the evil one does not want us reaching more people, does not want us making heaven crowded. And so we will face obstacles that prevent us from doing that. So help us to clear those, help us to persevere, and to help us to continue as you work in each one of us. Father, thank you again. It's in your Son, Jesus' name, that we pray. And we all said, Amen. Amen. Amen.